Very much. I now recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Goldman, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Mullin, how do you determine when a court order is political or not?
Well, typically when it's overturned by a higher court.
So in the interim period, when it's on appeal, do you follow that court order?
Sir, we enforce the law every single day. We don't pick and
That's not my
choose which
question.
law we enforce. We simply.
I'm not talking about the law. I'm talking about a court order.
But it is a law, so we're enforcing.
A cabinet secretary just told Congress he has no idea about a case where his own agency lied, but in court to federal prosecutors, to a judge, and for over a year. And when asked if he'd actually follow federal court orders, he couldn't say yes 4 different times. This is what happens when you hand DHS to someone who hasn't been briefed yet.
To enter into the record a lawsuit that was filed today by the New Jersey Department of Health, in which they are asking for access to Delaney Hall because they have in fact been denied access to the medical unit, the sleeping areas, and the bathing and toileting areas. So it doesn't actually appear that the lack of violations is due to a finding that the conditions are sufficient, but that actually they are being denied access. Does that change your assessment of whether you've done enough due diligence here? And maybe more importantly, and I understand you may want to look into this, but can you commit us to making sure that the department has access to that facility?
Well, we give them access to the things we are contracted with them and required to do, which is the health, the food, the preparation, the facilities. They don't always have unfettered access to the detention center. If it's within their contract, we'll help them. But there is a difference between federal facilities, because they're not able to get to all federal facilities, and federal privatized systems too, where they are required by law to have access. We'll always allow them to have access. But because they want to politicize it, and the governor wants to politicize it by saying that they weren't allowed access, it's not true. And I would suggest they spend more time in their own prison system.
This is endless. Anytime somebody disagrees with you, whether it's a member of this committee, whether it's a state public health agency, whether it's a federal court, they are politicizing the Department of...
Sir, that's exactly what you're doing.
Homeland Security. I've just been sort of chilled by our interaction from earlier on this.
That's the first dodge. Goldman doesn't ask about the law. He asks about court orders. Mullin acts like those are the same thing. They're not. Laws are written by Congress. Court orders are issued when you break those laws. This is day one stuff.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, this is from a federal court decision regarding ICE's activities in Minnesota. ICE is not a law unto itself. ICE has violated nearly 100 court orders. This list should give pause to anyone, no matter his or her political beliefs, who cares about the rule of law. ICE has likely violated more court orders in January 2026 than some federal agencies have violated in their entire existence. That's not a Democratic-appointed judge. That is a Republican-appointed judge describing the scale of illegality. I understand your MO and others in the administration's MO is to attack us personally or to claim that we're inciting violence when we point out the widespread illegality. But this is a Republican-appointed judge who is saying the exact same thing that I am saying. This is a really important discussion for us to have, because this is, whether you want to believe it or not, at the root of our disagreement, is that it is very hard for us to figure out how to fund an agency that is violating the law. Again, that's not me saying it. That's a Republican-appointed federal judge. Now, this widespread violation of court orders admittedly largely happened before you got on the job. And as a senator, you always struck me as somebody who cared about the rule.
The day before Goldman's hearing, Murphy got the same non-answer. 4 times he asked, 4 times Mullin said, "We enforce the law," which is not the same thing as, "Yes, we follow court orders." Murphy's response was blunt. That's how republics end.
Laws.
Now, you are aware, I'm sure, of a case in New York related to the arrests at immigration courthouses. In March, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York wrote an extraordinary letter to a judge accusing an ICE lawyer of concealing a memo from both the U.S. Attorney's Office and the judge. And that memo specifically undermined the policy that ICE was using to arrest immigrants at immigration courthouses. You're familiar with that?
I'm actually not.
You're not, okay. Well, that is what happened. It's a little disappointing to me that you're not familiar with that.
I don't know the number of cases we have that could we get sued.
Well, this is the
every day.
question, though. I worked in the Department of Justice for 10 years. I've never seen a letter like that where a representation by a government agency to a court that another government agency actively concealed a memo that ultimately changed the decision. Has there been...
Mullin gets testy, but here's the thing. Nobody put words in his mouth. Murphy literally just asked him to say yes or no. Mullin chose no both times.
Time, please. So the problem is that they are being arrested without a final order of removal. Judge Castell, a Bush appointee, I don't know if that matters in the political calculation, has ordered that to be stopped. Are you going to stop that same process outside of New York City because it applies equally every...
Goldman worked in that same office for 10 years. He's not exaggerating when he says he'd never seen a letter like that. The U.S. attorney accusing his own agency's lawyer, ICE's own lawyer, of hiding evidence from a judge, that's not a memo mix-up. That's misconduct.
And then they come out of court and they're snatched by your ICE officers. They're arrested. They're sent to Delaney Hall. They're sent to the MDC. They are not the worst of the worst. They have no records. And you know how we have no record? They have no records? Because those two facilities are low security. They are not allowed to go there if they have serious criminal convictions.
Delaney Hall has...
I didn't ask a question. I didn't ask a question,
You made an
sir.
accusation.
I
You said
reclaim my time.
666 people that's in Delaney Hall, 200...
Goldman sent a formal letter demanding a full accounting of every arrest, detention, and deportation made under that fake legal justification. His word, astounding. His ask, answers by April 3rd. Unverified, editor confirmed Mullin response, if any, to that letter.
Outside of New York City because it applies equally every single place in this country.
The gentleman's time has expired, and I
would
will...
like for him to
I will
answer
remind... The gentleman's time's expired. I will remind the witness that when this is the member's time, when they reclaim it, please allow them to move on. I am trying to hold everybody to the 5 minutes. I'm letting him try to answer when these are important, because these are important questions, everyone. I'm trying to let him answer, but I will still keep order here. So, witnesses, when the time is reclaimed, please allow the member to continue. Their time is limited to 5 minutes.
It's a simple question. Can he answer it?
No, your time's now expired, and I will recognize the gentleman
Well,
from...
way to run interference.
The DOJ's word for lying to a federal judge for over a year, regrettable. Over 1,000 people in New York alone were arrested under that regrettable justification. The NYCLU said those arrests had far-reaching consequences, you think? Goldman telegraphs the rebuttal before Mullin can even use it. A Republican-appointed judge looked at this policy and said, no, not a liberal activist, George W. Bush's pick. That's the ruling you're ignoring when you refuse to answer a yes or no question about court orders. Castell's language is damning, turning mandatory court hearings into traps. That's a federal judge describing ICE's operation at 26 Federal Plaza, and the DHS Secretary doesn't know about it. Goldman's argument is airtight. The facilities themselves are the evidence. Delaney Hall is low security. Low security means no serious criminal convictions. So when Mullin says, we only go after the worst, the very classification of his own detention center says otherwise. That's Goldman on the ground, every week. His own district office is in the same building. He's not reading about this in a briefing. He's watching it happen in his lobby. Mullin has had the job for months and hasn't found time to learn what Goldman sees every Thursday. Same week, the committee was grilling him on court orders. Mullin was on X denying a hunger strike that was very much happening. New Jersey's governor sent state police. Senators showed up. The courts had to intervene. But on X, no hunger strike, no problem. The clock runs out exactly when the real question lands. Mullin never answers. The chairman never makes him. And somewhere in lower Manhattan, people are still being arrested at courthouse doors under a legal memo that, quote, does not and has never applied. If a DHS secretary doesn't know about the biggest legal scandal in his agency's history and won't say he'll follow court orders, what exactly is he there for? Drop your answer below. Subscribe if you want to keep watching this story.
A dozen survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse walked into that room wearing white. And when Representative Pramila Jayapal asked how many of them had been contacted by the Department of Justice in the past year, every single hand went up, not to say yes, to say no. The DOJ never called in a year. That was the temperature in that room before Attorney General Pam Bondi had answered a single question. Hold that image. We're coming back to it.